Good evening, everybody. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson.
And we're the Scanner Guys. And welcome to the show. We see a ton of check-ins, Rich.
A lot of check-ins considering it's just starting.
Yeah, so welcome, everybody. We love to see where you guys are from. So certainly keep posting, where you're watching us from. I know Dale is down in Mississippi. I'm not too sure if he's watching tonight. He's doing a little R&R down there, which is nice.
Yep.
Dale,
it's nice to be able to get out and travel again,
Yep. Dale is one of our frequent flyers, and he's been a guest on the show. And he tells us every time he's mentioned on the show, it's his favorite show. So I wonder if his interview on our show is his favorite show.
Oh, yeah, he watches that show over and over again. Every night he replays that show.
Hey, Kelly's checking in. Hey, Kelly.
Oh, that's yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, she's famous. She's got a TV show, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Kelly is Dale's wife.
No. Well, you never know.
Sorry. Oh, man. Let's get to this show.
Let's get to the show. Hi, Kelly. Hi, Dale. How you doing?
How you doing? Oh, man. Tonight, we're talking about... Who's going to kill us?
Oh, hey, there's Terry. Terry, I've known Terry for 20 years.
Oh my God!
Yeah. Well, we got a lot of regulars here. We got Chris. He's one of our almost every show listener and checker inner.
Yeah.
And a bunch of our regulars. Will's out there. I see. Well, I need to get my romper room thing. I see Will. I see Kevin. I see Les. I see Chris.
Yeah, there's tons of viewers tonight.
Yeah.
I know a lot of you watch the show each and every week, and you're not all new to the scanner hobby. Mm-hmm. But we wanted to do a video, a part of our series of live shows of police scanners for newbies. I mean, there's a lot of people still getting into this hobby. They may discover it through Broadcastify. Mm-hmm. They may hear about a big incident going on in their town. There's a feed on Broadcastify. They start listening to it for that incident, and then they get kind of hooked on it, and then they feel, geez, I wish I could lock in on one particular channel or one particular department, but I can't do it through this app.
Yeah.
So the scanner is the next best thing to be able to do that. So we're going to dive into, what it's like for someone to get into this hobby. I'm not too sure if some of you are new to the hobby or just fairly new to the hobby. Hopefully the show will be helpful to you.
Yep.
So as many of you know, we're on social media. Follow, like, and subscribe to the Scanner Guys on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Instagram. Check out our blog, thescannerguyshow.com, which is great, and we're going to be adding more stuff onto the website. And we've got other stuff on the website, Rich. We've got the blog, of course.
Yep.
We've got the newsletter. You can shop our swag, hats, T-shirts, and coffee mugs. All that is available on our website. So thescannerguyshow.com. Rich and I are, of course, wearing our T-shirts.
And I had my hat here someplace. I don't know what I did with it.
Well, Rich is looking for
that.
that.
My hat. Oh, it's over there on the table.
Okay. Well, as many of you probably know, there is so many scanner models. There's a good amount at this point, especially on the Uniden family of scanners.
Yeah, they have got a very extensive product line, and Whistler's product line is a little more subdued.
Yes,
I would say, but the Uniden product line, they've got a scanner for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, so we're going to look at it in that perspective. So, how do you know what scanner you need? Well, it's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. Public safety agencies or what you're looking to monitor kind of determine what you need At this point, you can't say, well, I'm going to listen to XYZ department. I just can get this $100 scanner. No. You have to have the proper scanner for that particular agency, what they're using for communication. They could be using analog trunking. They could be using digital. They could be using DMR, Pro Voice, NextEdge. You
got to get the scanner to fit what you need to listen to.
Yes. And that's all based on what you find, and we're going to tell you how to discover that. Or if you're not sure how to do that, we're going to give you some ways to be able to figure that out. So we've got our stairs going up to the scanners that are available. Now you can see there's a lot of Uniden. Whistler also has some scanners that fit in this category as well, but we wanted to give examples of each model that's there. So you can see with the stairs, we start with the analog conventional, which is, what scanner is that, Rich, that's on the screen we never talk about?
Oh, gee, we never talk about that one. I can never remember. I think it's the BC 125AT. I don't know. We never talk about that one. So.
Yep, so the 125... the 125AT is certainly the first one that we're looking at. So that's going to basically do analog conventional, the real simple stuff.
Yep.
So we move up to the next category. We see a WS1040. Now this one is in this category alone at this point, because most of all the Uniden radios at this point can do phase 1 and phase 2.
Now, we're mentioning radios that are currently being manufactured and for sale.
In purchase, yes.
Yeah. So there are other scanners out there that were previously made that will fit these categories. Like the WS1040, analog and digital trunking phase 1 only, if you've got a 396 XT.
Yes.
That would fit that as well.
Yeah, these are all current radios that you can purchase, and they're still being manufactured.
Right.
So with this category, with the analog and digital trunking phase 1 only. Now, this scanner will still work for most areas as long as the trunking system supports talk groups that are phase 1. So if they're running on phase 1, you're good to go.
Yep.
If they're using talk groups that are phase 2, you're not going to be able to hear it.
Right.
So that's certainly a thing to keep in mind. We'll tell you a little bit more about that when we get to the database section of the show. And then we get to our first digital phase 2 scanner step, and that is the BC325P2. We call this a clean slate scanner, Rich.
Yeah.
Why is it a clean slate scanner?
Well, the 325 doesn't have the zip code functionality, so you have to program it basically from scratch. It's like making a cake from scratch or going out and buying some cake mix. It's this one, you basically start from scratch. You do everything. You program in the frequencies, you program in the systems, the talk groups, and everything else like that. Versus a zip code scanner, which is the next one up on the chain, which can do a lot of that stuff for you.
Yeah, so basically this is what a lot of us were used to when we got into the hobby. Once we got away from crystals and all that jazz, everything was clean slate. So you had to program it up if you wanted to hear something.
Right.
And then the Home Patrol 1 came along. And that was the first zip code based scanner.
What a game changer that was.
And that created this next category, the yellow step, which is the database scanner, the programming by zip code. So the database is inside this radio. So you could punch in a zip code, and the scanner would determine, where you are by your zip code, and would essentially create a list of frequencies for you to listen to.
Yeah, and as one of our watchers mentioned, these are only representative members of each category. There are other scanners in these categories. So on the yellow one, the 436, you can also use the TRX1. the Whistler. Unfortunately, Whistler really doesn't have a competitor to the 325. They don't have a Phase 2 scanner that doesn't have the zip code functionality. Their only Phase 2 scanners are their TRXs. But they do have the competitor to the 436, which is the TRX series.
Yeah, so zip code based scanner, so that's what we're looking at there. And then Uniden took it to the next level. So they basically gave us a scanner that's able to monitor analog, monitor trunking, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Also gave us a radio that can do DMR, Pro Voice, and Next Edge as an upgrade. But they took it to the next level by making an SDR scanner.
Yeah.
What does that all mean for someone that's entering the hobby, Rich? What is an SDR?
So an SDR stands for Software Defined Radio. That means instead of having tuned circuits and radio RF devices in the radio, a lot of that functionality is offloaded to basically a computer, to a chip. And that software-defined radio. So instead of defining the radio by tuned circuits, crystals, RF devices, you create a software program to tell a chip what to do, and that replaces a lot of the RF circuitry.
So that basically made it so if you're in an area where simulcast is a huge issue, they were able to correct that.
Yep. Yeah, and this SDS was built from the ground up to deal with simulcast, digital simulcast, much better than any other scanner has in the past, and it does. It really, really, really works great on digital simulcast. If you've got a simulcast system in your area that you want to listen to, chances are you're going to want to get the SDS.
So this is kind of going up the steps. Yeah, you're gaining more features. Mm-hmm. Also, the price goes up gradually as well.
Yeah.
So,
and the higher end scanners do everything the ones lower in the totem pole do.
Yeah, I mean that's why you see the bar going across and then continuing to go up the steps.
Yep.
Now the same thing goes for the base mobiles as well. We're going to take a look at those right now. So same story there. Of course, we've got some analog conventional tabletop models, or actually they're both Uniden and Whistler would be considered a tabletop model for the analog conventional category.
Yeah, they've got the 355 and 365 for Uniden and the WS1010 for Whistler.
Yeah, so there's a couple of scanners in that category. Of course, Whistler has their base mobile, which has Phase 1 only capability on the digital side, and then we jump up to the to another clean slate scanner, which is the 996P2, which is still a phenomenal radio of its time.
Yeah.
We also jump up to the programmable by zip code at this point, the 536 HP, phenomenal radio.
Yeah, we like it.
And then we, of course, have the SDR, which is the SDS 200. Now, the one category I left off on here, which is a great radio, and only Uniden has one that's able to do analog and analog trunking, is the BCT15X.
Yeah, that would be kind of in between the analog conventional and the analog digital. It would be kind of a sub one. And it's kind of a throwback to the old days.
The old days, we used to have this middle category. Mm-hmm. So we would have our analog conventional, and then we would have our analog trunking category.
Yeah. Which
both Whistler and Uniden had that category. Who can remember the BC 346?
Yeah.
That was the pairing model with the 15X.
Right. And when they were first introduced, they were a viable radio because there was still a lot of analog trunking out there. There were a lot of EDAC systems out there that were using analog modulation, a lot of Motorola trunking systems, a lot of LTR trunking systems. So that BCT15 was great for people who wanted trunking and needed trunking but didn't need digital. Nowadays, a lot of those systems, if not most of those systems, are long gone, and they've been since converted to some format of digital. But that 15 is still a popular scanner for analog conventional stuff. So it's like the high-end version of the analog conventional scanners.
We've got some good questions coming in real time. We're going to jump on those while we're on this slide. Best for aircraft. I believe you would probably agree, Rich. It's probably the Whistlers.
Yeah, they tend to have better sounding audio on AM, and they, as a rule, tend to receive aircraft better. With that being said, the BCT-15 is an awesome aircraft scanner, and I use those a lot for that.
So we've got a couple of options there, Brian. So you could either take a look at a Whistler model, possibly if you're looking at a handheld or base. You can take a look at their models that they have there, from the analog conventional to the digital trunking. If you have a little bit of need for phase one, you have that flexibility to be able to go either way with that scanner, or
right.
The BCT-15. Of course, the 125 AT if you're looking for a portable.
Yeah, and if you're going to go for a portable, I would almost always say get the 125. The difference between that and the Whistler versions are relatively negligible when it comes to reception quality, but the 125 is just an awesome little radio. I mean, it's just so small, compact, and it just works great for aviation monitoring.
Yeah, that's for sure. The other question, which is a really good one, this is from Todd, asking about which has better ears, the 996P2 or the 536.
I think the radio, having looked inside these, the radio part of it is pretty darn similar, and I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between models on which one gives you better radio performance. Now, discounting the programming setups and stuff, as far as the reception-wise, I think they're pretty much identical. On a model-to-model basis, you are always going to have some difference between radios of the same model. So I've got two 536s here. You got, what, 4 of them all together?
And there's variation reception-wise.
Yeah, and my top radio works better on VHF than the bottom radio. The bottom radio works better on 800. So, but they're identical radios. The serial numbers are within 100 of each other, so they're about exactly the same time. It's just one radio just happens to work a little bit better than the other one on that band, and that's not unusual, model to model.
Yeah, so if you're lucky enough to own 2 of the same model, the great thing is you can duplicate the programming and put them head to head.
Yeah.
And then you find your answer. If you find that one's working better on one thing versus the other, then you put that programming on that radio and put the other programming on the other.
Well, like with me, I'm kind of an outlier. I've got 8 BCT-15s and 4 BCT-15Xs, and they're all programmed identically. And I've noticed that there's one that seems to work better on military aviation here and there, a couple of those, and a couple of them happen to work better on VHF railroad and marine channels. So I've kind of figured that out, and I moved the ones that are better on railroad and marine channels to the bottom row, so that those are the ones that I will switch over to that. And the ones above that work better on aviation, so those are the ones I use for that.
Yeah, Joe, which we know Joe, he's quite a scanner enthusiast, and he kind of agrees. The specs are very similar on the 996P2 and the 536. Overall, it's very slight variation, right. And the biggest thing that sets them apart is how they're programmed. Like you said earlier, That's the major thing. If you like the database type of thing or creating favorites lists, then you go to the 536. If you like the clean slate,
Yep.
996P2.
Yeah. Or you don't want to spend the extra money for the zip code functionality. If you were to take these radios apart and take a look at them inside, you'll see that the RF circuitry looks very similar. There's very little difference. Where you're getting the difference is when you're getting into the SDSs.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, if the question was which radio on the screen right now is best on simulcast, hands down it would be the SDS 200 on this screen, and on the previous one would be the 100.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, these radios, this is the thing. There's a lot of options here. And a lot of times, when Rich and I talk to customers, that's why it's great when you're first time buying a scanner to talk to somebody that's used these before.
Yeah. And we have obviously used them a lot.
So, I mean, typically what I do is when I get somebody that's on the phone that's potentially buying their first scanner, I'm going to find out how they're going to be using the radio. We're going to determine, are they carrying it with them? Is it just going to be stationary? So we're trying to decide whether base mobile or portable. And then the next thing is their skill level.
Yeah.
Is this person going to want to eventually program things themselves? They want to build things from scratch, or they want to have the ability to do a zip code or create favorites list. We're trying to figure out your skill level.
Right.
We're trying to figure out what you're looking to monitor. We want to be able to get you a scanner that's going to grow with you.
Yeah, and like I said, the very first thing we ask, are you looking for mobile or portable, or where do you plan to use it? In the house, in the car, and if you're in the car, or do you have room to mount a scanner, or do you need to use a handheld? And once we figure that out, then we're going to look at your area and see what they're using in the areas that you want to listen to. And then that will tell us which scanners will work, and then we're going to figure out which is going to be the best of those models for you.
Yeah, I mean, these are all great radios. They all have their place, whether it be unit or a Whistler. It's just trying to find the best home for them. Essentially, when we're talking to a potential customer buying their first scanner, we want to be able to find the best scanner that's going to work for what you need it to do.
Yeah. And we're going to give you some options as well. We'll tell you, hey, if you want a zip code scanner, let's say we're in an area that any of our digital scanners would work for you. But we're going to give you some options. Okay, you've got the clean slate, you've got the zip code, or you've got the color display and simulcast.
Yeah, and then it's all about budget. I mean, the thing is if you're requiring digital, that kind of eliminates the bottom end.
Right.
So then we have to look at, okay, so, let's say budget's a factor. And a lot of times it is with callers. I mean, they're getting into this hobby. They can't spend $600 on a scanner.
Oh, they can, but then their spouses are going to kill them.
So typically, we're going to look at, on this screen, we're going to look at, okay, so so you get two options here that are semi-affordable. Mm-hmm. We've got the Whistler 1040, and then we have the BCD 325P2. Now, granted, it doesn't have the database, but we have options where we could program it for you so it's ready to go out of the box. Scanner Master wise, in case many of you don't know, we're sponsored by Scanner Master, and they do programming services. So that's going to be where we're going to go, or if you feel comfortable programming it yourself, we're going to recommend software and a radio reference subscription. So, there's definitely all types of avenues to go down. But yeah, I mean, this is the product line, essentially, by steps, from analog conventional all the way up to the cream of the crop.
Yep. Start at the bottom, work your way up, and here are your options. And some of these will work better for you. And if you have a special need, like you need Pro Voice, well, that eliminates the Whistlers because only a Unitins will do Pro Voice. If you live in an area that's prone to bad simulcast? Well, you're going to have to start with the SDSs. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. If you're in an area that uses only analog, well, then you can use any scanner we got, and then it's just a matter of what features do you want and how much money do you want to spend.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, that's going to be looking at, the best thing.
Yep.
We get this question all the time, and I saw it in the comments. Somebody asked about it. Which is better reception-wise, a portable or a base mobile?
Well, typically, when they are hooked to the same antenna, you should get relatively consistent results between the two of them on, like a WS1040 and a 1065, or an SDS 100 and SDS 200. Hooked to the same antenna system, you're going to get roughly the same performance. I found sometimes the handheld scanners tend to be a little more sensitive because they have to overcome the smaller antennas. So I don't know if it's true or it's just something that I've kind of picked up on. But the handhelds tend to have a little more sensitivity because they typically have a little bit worse antenna. So the radio itself is going to be a little more sensitive to overcome that. With the antennas that come with the radios, typically you're going to have better reception, however, from the desktop than a portable, just because you usually have a better antenna on it.
Yeah, because the base mobile is usually fixed in one position, whether it be in the vehicle or in your home. And if you're lucky enough to be able to put an antenna up and out, whether it be outside of the vehicle or outside of your home, of course, that situation is going to make your base mobile have better reception.
Right.
Now, if you're subject to the portable antenna that comes with it, you either got the rubber duck or you've upgraded something else. That's going to improve things. But you're portable. So if you're constantly moving to area, reception's going to change slightly. You're going to go into more dead spots. You're not up and out with the antenna. As we always say, best thing for an antenna is up and out.
And then Dan brings up a very good point, and I kind of made it less elegantly a little before, but sibling models should match relatively closely. So the 1040 and the 1065 should work pretty much the same, all else being equal. The SDSs should work pretty much the same, all else being equal. The 436, the 536, the 325, the 996. The only radio that doesn't have a mobile and a portable equivalent these days is is pretty much the Home Patrol.
And the 15X.
The 15X, to a lesser extent. I kind of look at the 125 as kind of the non-trunking handheld version of the 15X.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's very interesting to see. Let's take a look at the side-by-side here with the portable. We kind of talked about reception. Of course, with the portable, it's going to be small. It's going to be compact. It's going to be easy to carry around. And it can operate on batteries. Yeah. You've got that ability to take it everywhere. A lot of times, the first scanner someone gets is typically a portable radio. Because I'm going to bring it with me in the car, or I'm going to bring it with me, outside while I'm sitting on the patio, or bring it back in the house. I may listen to it in the living room, may listen to it in the bedroom. They want the ability to take it with them. And typically, the portable is a lot of times the first scanner someone gets.
Yeah. The
base mobile, great thing. So if you want to have it in a fixed location in your vehicle, or wherever you listen, let's say you got an office or a den, or you want to put it right there. That's going to be where you're primarily listening. Great. It's found its home. It's in a fixed location. It has a larger display. The other thing, it's got a larger speaker.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the great thing about it is if you're using it in a vehicle, that larger speaker is going to be helpful while you're having the windows down, or you got some music that you're listening to, so you kind of balance the levels.
And we should put an asterisk on the larger display bullet point here. If you take a look at the 1040 and the 1065,
their displays are the same.
Identical to display,
Yes, but most models, if you take, for instance, if you're looking at, a 536 versus a 436,
Right.
there's a little bit more real estate on the 536 display, and there's a lot of real estate on the SDS 200 versus the 100. Granted, the 100 still has a pretty decent sized display for a portable.
Yeah, it's the biggest display on a portable that I've seen recently. So, and then on the 325 996, the 996 display is a little bit larger, and typically the portable has a more vertical layout, whereas the mobiles have a more horizontal layout, and it's an ease of use type of thing. So on a portable, you can do this. It's really convenient. But if you're looking at desktop, you're punching the buttons on a radio that is sitting in front of you. Sometimes that's easier to deal with than a portable.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really cool thing. But that's the portable versus mobile. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that you have to decide. Are you going to be carrying this with you all the time, or are you just going to be using it in one location? Usually that's the deciding factor. And then a lot of people start out with a portable, like I said, and then eventually they find themselves listening a lot at one location. They say, you know what, I'll use the portable when I'm out and about, but when I'm at home, I'm listening in the den, I'm going to use the base mobile. And then the great thing about having two radios, in case something happens, you can lock down on one channel on one radio and lock down on the other channel on the other radio. So let's say there's a major event going on with your town, so you can lock down on the police, lock down on the fire, and then you don't miss a beat at all.
Absolutely. And a couple people have mentioned power outages. So if you're in an area that's prone to power outages, then you might want to make sure either you have a portable or you have some way to battery operate your desktop.
Yeah, I mean, if you're prone to weather, like weather events that cause power failures, that may be your first radios to go with a portable just because of that. Yeah.
And like I say, if you're unsure, the portable works just about everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the scanners are great. I mean, they're great for entertainment and also great for safety to know what's going on in your neck of the woods. What can you hear on a scanner? Now, most people call them police scanners, and they assume that all they can hear is police. Well, you can hear fire. You can hear a lot of other things. The big three, as Rich coined it, police, fire, and EMS.
Yeah, that's what 90% of the callers that we get want to listen to. They want to listen to the local police. They want to listen to the local fire. They want to listen to their local ambulance. And that is generally what they buy the scanner for. And then down the road, they realize that there's a lot more interesting stuff to listen to elsewhere.
Yeah, and the rest, the best of the rest, is railroads, aviation, maritime, military, businesses, and those personal communications such as ham, GMRS, FRS, and CB. Yep. Now, if you're interested in joining a GMRS club, monitor the channel, see what it's all about, see if it's worth the dues. The same thing, too, with ham radio. If you have an interest in ham radio, take a listen, and then you can get your ham radio's license. And then always, there's so many different things out there. You can listen to the, like Paul mentioned, listening to some of the traffic copters that are out there. Let's say you're commuting back and forth to work and you're in an area where there's a lot of traffic. You may be able to get the tip of what's going on from the traffic copter before it even hits the air. He may be telling the on-air talent. Typically, the traffic a reporter that's in the helicopter, and if it's an on-air talent at the studio, will communicate with each other. Yeah. I know in Boston, what typically would happen is on WBZ, the helicopter would have a section of roadway to report on, and then the talent in studio would cover the rest of it. Yeah. But a lot of times he would pass along stuff traveling to places. Oh, yeah, that accident, I could see it on 95 is cleared as they're making their way to the Mass Pike, to do a report there. So that is definitely a fun thing to listen to as well, and it's very helpful when you're out and about.
And a lot of these things, too, if your local police department goes encrypted, you've had a scanner for a couple years, and one day they flip the switch and the police are disappeared and they're gone. then they call us and, no, now what do I do? Well, start listening to this other stuff, and you might find a lot of interest on that. Or listen to fire channels, because a lot of times the fire department are going to the same scenes the police department are going to, and you might get the information from them.
Yeah, I mean, if there's something going on, like a shooting or domestic or something, and somebody's injured, yeah, fire and EMS are going to roll on scene, and you're going to know, okay, you're going to know the rest of the story, just from listening to that. And then if you listen to all three, police, fire, and EMS, you're going to know the whole story, because you're going to hear it from different angles, from the police angle, the fire angle, and the EMS angle.
Yeah, and you're not going to hear everything on one service. The fire department, it doesn't really care about some of the stuff the police department cares about, and vice versa. So if you want the whole story, listen to all three sides.
There's some cool stuff there, and we can't say, how interesting. We've done full shows on railroads, aviation, and maritime. So if you're interested in listening to any of those, check out our channel. That we have shows that are for all three of those that you can kind of learn about, and it's certainly helpful. So
those the railroads, aviation, and marine are kind of like the next three.
Yes,
they are the mini three, and then the rest. Then it's like all the rest. So it's like Gilligan's Island. The Professor and Marianne were the rest. For a while.
So funny. The other question that we get from new people entering into the hobby, what will my range be?
Yeah.
And we get this all the time, and they want us to put a number, a mileage number. If I buy the 125 AT, what will be my range?
17 miles.
And then if I buy the SDS 100, will I get more range?
38 miles.
Well, we're going to find out. A lot has to do with terrain. Plays a huge role. You see this beautiful cabin?
Mm-hmm.
They may get pretty good reception because they're high up. But if somebody's tucked away behind one of these mountains or in a valley, guess what? You may not hear it.
And they're not. And you see that one mountain that maybe is a mile to the right, or to the left, depending on which way you're looking at your monitor. There might be some other station that's just 5 miles away on the other side of that mountain. They're not going to be able to hear it all because of terrain.
Yeah, so terrain plays a huge role. I mean, with repeaters and the invention of repeaters, that helps out a lot. So if you're within what's called line of sight with that repeater, guess what? You're going to be able to get reception. The same thing if you were monitoring someone on a two-way radio without a repeater. If you're within line of sight, Rich, we're going to look at those mountains again. So we got our cabin here, and we've got that mountain, which I'm going to put the mouse right over here.
Yeah.
So if we had a gentleman or a lady over there with a 5-watt portable, what do you think their line of sight will be? Pretty good?
Oh, yeah. I think there's a pretty good bet that you're going to be able to hear from that cabin. We used to do a thing called mountain topping, where you would go to the highest point you can get to and see how far you can get with your portable or your mobile radio. And elevation is a huge help. And that's why you see antennas and towers on the top of mountains, or on the top of buildings, or on the top of water towers. They are on the highest points in the area because that provides the best reception and transmission range.
Yes. So these other things that kind of play into effect. And then, we've talked about antennas, up and out.
Yeah.
So that's a huge factor. So let's say you're using the rubber duck on your portable scanner and you've got it in your home and it's in an interior room. So your reception is not going to be as great as an antenna that's outside, up and out. So that's going to play a role. The other thing too, I mentioned interior room. So if you're in an exterior room where there's a window, your reception is going to be better in that room versus the interior room because of it's less that the signal has to go through, especially with digital.
Yeah.
Rich, break it down. What is digital exactly? It's binary code, right?
Yeah, it's ones and zeros. And
so what happens when that code doesn't get fully through?
So what digital is, basically it takes an analog signal or voice, breaks it down into a binary code, a bunch of ones and zeros, and it sends all those ones and zeros across the radio and across the air over a radio signal. And then it's received by your digital receiver, which takes those ones and zeros and converts them back to an analog audio so that you can hear it out of the speaker. So when you're sending ones and zeros, you're going to lose bits and here and there. So you have some what could be called digital dropout. Most of the time on an analog signal, you can lose little bits of the signal, and your mind just kind of fills in the gaps. It does that little to a lesser extent on digital signals. So your reception can be affected, whether it's analog or digital. With that being said, people ask about, they went to a digital system, so I need a digital antenna. There's no such thing.
No such thing. And even the television, HD television sales have marketed digital antennas.
Yeah. So there is no difference between an analog and digital when it comes to the actual antennas. The antenna, all the antenna really cares about is the frequency involved. The higher the frequency, the shorter the wavelength, thus the shorter the elements on the antenna. And it doesn't matter if it's analog or digital. It's the element and layout, or the size and layout of the elements. And if you take a look at this picture here, towards the bottom, you see what we call a Yagi antenna, which is
right over here.
Right there, yeah. You've got a bunch of elements that are cut to a specific length on a boom, and that makes it very directional. So that's the arrangement of the elements. The size of the elements determine the frequency. The arrangement of the elements determine things like directionality.
Yeah, so this is, elevation, location, type of system, your antenna, their antenna, all plays into this. So like Rich said, with 17 miles and 30 some odd miles, we can't predict what your reception's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. And like I say, people call us all the time and say, how far can I get with this radio or with this antenna? And we basically say,
Yeah, it depends on your location, depends on who you're monitoring. The other thing that plays a role is weather and atmospheric conditions.
Take a look at Bob's comment, the last comment on there.
Oh yeah, the digital antennas is like blinker fluid for your car.
Yeah. Out here in Arizona, they don't use blinker fluid because they don't use blinkers. So.
Yeah, so that's the thing, and obstructions. Now things like mountains, hills, large buildings, cell phone towers can be considered because it creates an RF noise.
Yeah.
The other thing, and this is very true, and I wanted to hold on, I just saw his comment. I wanted to put it up there. This is huge, Paul. You are absolutely right. I had a customer that was in Rhode Island, and they have a trunk system that has three separate sections. There's the north, there's the Providence, and then the southern system. So it's basically a 3-site system with other repeater sites within it, but basically it's divided out. And he would try to listen to one of the areas, and he said, well, I was getting it, and I said, well, it's springtime, and I said, the leaves are coming back. Yeah. So that may be why you're not getting it as well now as you were in the winter, because the trees were bare, and that made it so there was a little bit less of an obstruction in between you and them, the tower.
Yeah.
And I basically said to him, you know what? Give me a call. As soon as the leaves come off, let me know.
Yeah.
And I believe he did. He only gave me a call, and he said, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
The second those leaves came down, I was getting it again.
They had an issue in northern Arizona, and if you've ever been to northern Arizona, you know that that's pine tree country. And pine trees have pine needles, and they're about yay long. And they apparently had big issues putting up 800 megahertz systems up there because of the pine needles were absorbing the signal or some silly thing like that. And it was a big problem that they had to overcome. And foliage can make a huge difference.
It certainly can. I mean, the other thing that that we deal with is time of day.
Yeah.
During the daytime, you're going to find that you're not getting great reception on those distant signals.
Yeah.
But as the evening progresses, you're going to find that reception improves because the RF floor goes down.
Yeah.
There's not as much interference. And then, of course, we mentioned weather and atmospheric conditions. I mean, during the summer, you could have that nice skip.
Oh, yeah. And there's a phenomenon called ducting that basically what it is, it's called a temperature inversion where cold air gets, how they say warm air rises. Cold air gets trapped under, or the other way around, warm air gets trapped under a layer of cold air, and it creates kind of a shield. And radio signals will bounce off of that temperature inversion, and that's very pronounced in the VHF high band. So in the Midwest, you get a lot of temperature inversions during the summertime. And there was a very famous one in the late 80s, early 90s, however I recall, where it was for about 3 days, and there was this big temperature inversion over the entire Midwest. I was listening to stuff. I lived in suburban Chicago at the time. I was listening to stuff from Ohio, Pennsylvania, Iowa, Missouri, all over the Midwest on that. And I was making ham radio contacts on 2 meters with a portable for hundreds of miles and hitting repeaters in southern Illinois from a portable north of Chicago. So, yeah, it was weather and atmospheric conditions can affect not only low band but also, high band and UHF.
Yeah, I remember it was one summer listening to New York City police and from Massachusetts, from southeastern Massachusetts, just because of the signal skip. And I've also, mornings are certainly great as well because, the RF floor is not quite, where it usually is during the daytime.
Yeah.
And it's great. Sunday morning, which I wrote in a blog entry, which is on the ScannerGuysShow.com, talking about radio AM FM DXing, and was great Sunday morning for listening to those distant signals on the AM FM band, which was really cool. Let's continue on with this.
Real quick, you can use things like weather channels and aviation ATIS and AWAS channels as kind of beacons if you're into that type of DXing on a scanner. If you know where the weather stations are and what frequencies or the AWAS or the ATIS channels are, you can see when those bands are popping up when you're picking up stuff that's a little bit further away.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I use those all the time just to make sure that I know that I can receive X amount of no weather radio stations just as a baseline to make sure that everything's configured correctly.
Yeah, that's a good way to test your antenna and radios, too.
Yes, that's for sure. So Radio Reference, if you're entering into this hobby, Radio Reference is going to be a website that you're going to frequent probably quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm on there hours every day, so.
So Radio Reference is a website that contains the scanner database for the United States, Canada, and the rest of the world. The forums are awesome, interaction in between other members. That's where you can do a lot of reading and research on various topics. A lot of things have been covered in the forums, questions that you may want to do a search in the forums. Somebody may have already asked it, and the question may be already answered.
And it's a great thing to check when the database doesn't cover what you're looking for, especially if something's being changed. So I had a caller today from Hawaii who wanted to find out what's going on in Honolulu. And Honolulu's been using a Pro Voice system for years and years, and they're in the process of switching over to a P25. Sometimes the database isn't quite up to date yet. So if you look in the forums, there might be information that's in the forums that just hasn't filtered down to the database yet.
The other thing that's great for, getting into the hobby is the wiki pages for systems and radios and etc.
Yeah.
That's a great place, to look for that rare information that you may be looking for. And then the other thing, if you're looking for additional radios or gear, they have classified ads. I mean, this is like a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
For scanner enthusiasts, from the database to the getting your questions answered. And also, they also have the live audio online through Broadcastify, which is their sister site. And that is super cool. So if you're into the hobby and there's something going on halfway across the country, you can eavesdrop in on if there is a feed available. And how that works is it's not Broadcastify putting scanners all over the place. It's just people like you or me that's volunteering their scanner to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and we connect it to a computer, and that computer connects to Radio Reference or to Broadcastify, and they make it available to other users. It's kind of an aggregation point for people who have scanners that they want to share it. Some people share it because they want to be able to listen to their scanner when they're away from home. Other people share it because they want to just to share it with their community, and there's other reasons why they do it. And there are a few that they're actually set up by the actual systems themselves. A police department who want encrypted might occasionally put up a feed on Radio Reference so they can control what's available out there and still have something going for their local traffic. So there's a lot of reasons why people or organizations may put a feed up there, but be happy they do, because it makes it
so there's somewhat of transparency of the department. But this is all great stuff on Radio Reference. Most of us scanner enthusiasts are probably going to start at the database. They're going to look at the database, and it's very simple to operate the database. When you get to the database page, it's a map of the United States or Canada, and you basically click on your state or province, and then you can filter right down to county level, and you can see exactly what's going on in your local level.
Yeah, and so obviously you know what state you're in, and you can go in and drill down right to the county, or if you're not doing that, you can easily click on the zip code and put a zip code in it, and it'll bring you right to that county.
Yeah, so if you're not sure what county you're in, put your zip code in. But the great thing about it is it'll pull up information on the website, which is great, and it's easy to use. And it's certainly a huge help, to be able to look at this information firsthand.
It is remarkable how I would say mature, how inclusive that database is, and the amount of work that has been put into it by not only the staff at Radio Reference, but the volunteer submitters and the volunteer database administrators. To put all that together. It's a lot of work, and it is extremely helpful. You'll notice the colors on there for the various states.
Yeah, so basically the green means that it's been updated in the last 24 hours. The yellow means in the past week.
Right.
So the gray ones just mean that it hasn't been an update in a little bit. Doesn't mean they haven't been updated. It just means it hasn't occurred within the last 24 hours of the last week.
Yeah, and it's a great tool. So if you're in a small state and you notice that the state's gone green all of a sudden, and it's been it's been gray for a long time, it's gone green. That's a good time to check it to see what's changed.
Yeah, we can actually go a little bit further, and we can click on the state of Massachusetts, and we can see that over on Dukes County, which is Martha's Vineyard, there was an update. And it looks like the police department added not the police department, but somebody added the new frequency for the police department. Yeah. It's a P25 conventional channel.
Yeah. And if you take a look in the upper right corner of the page for that particular county, there's a last updated date.
Mm-hmm. Right up here.
Yep, and if you click on that, it'll tell you what the last 10 changes were, so you can see what those actual changes were.
Yeah, you can even see what database administrator did it as well, and it shows the dates, and it's definitely a great way to be able to, if you haven't looked at the database in a while, it kind of draws attention to, I don't have this frequency in there, I better program it in.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great tool.
Let me go back to the database page. I typically will use Maine as an example. So let's say I got a customer that's in Portland, Maine, and they're looking for a digital, or not a scanner, I should say. I'm already giving away the end of the story here, but so they're looking for a scanner for Portland. So if I click on Cumberland County, and then scroll down, I see, look at this, a lot of analog conventional stuff. Oh, this is good. And I keep looking, and I see a lot of, and how I'm able to tell is FM or FMN indicates that it's analog.
Right.
So I keep scrolling down. I see some DMR if they wanted to monitor the schools. Looks like Falmouth PD is using DMR, so I got to keep that in mind. I got to let my customer know that those are something they should consider. If they're not interested in Falmouth, guess what? We don't need to worry about DMR. But if they are at some point, then we need to consider DMR. So here we are. Portland, South Portland, has a Phase 1 trunk system. So I'm going to scoot into here. And I'm going to take a look, and I'm going to see the database here, which is looks like it's just for Portland, South Portland. And I see a whole bunch of Ds, which indicates it's digital.
Right.
If I see any E's, the naughty E, that means encryption, which I don't, which is good. So if a customer said that, hey, I just want to listen to the city of Portland. I don't care about anything else. I'd say, look, you need a digital scanner. You could go with a Whistler 1040 or 1065 because it's only Phase 1 capable. Yep. Or you can look at any of the Uniden digital radios, and you can kind of decide on which radio that you want. We can go over the features. Now, the other thing with the state of Maine, which I'm going to back up a bit here, is we do see here down in the bottom is all the featured trunk systems for this area. And we see one that's called Maine State Communication Network. So I click on that, and I see, whoa! It's definitely for the state of Maine because I see all the counties listed here with all the sites. Now, do they want to monitor the state police? And I can look up here and I say, okay, it's a Phase 1 digital trunk system, so the radio I recommended for Portland is still going to work.
Yeah.
So they're going to be good to go. So let's say they were looking at one of those other towns, for example. Let me back out of this. So if they were looking at, let's see here, they were looking at Freeport.
Right.
All they care about is Freeport, Maine. Then I could say, okay, so you need an analog conventional scanner. $100, $120 scanner would work fine. And then they tell me, I need to hear the Maine State Police.
Yeah.
Then we've got to tell them, look, you need a digital scanner in order to, and then they can weigh the option. Okay, how important is the Maine State Police.
Yeah, is it worth the extra money to go to a digital scanner to get the state police? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. So the nice thing about analog is it works on any scanner, and even the digital one. So that confuses people too. A lot of people get surprised because they think, okay, well, if I got a digital scanner, am I going to have to get an analog scanner as well to listen to the analog channel? No, a digital scanner will do it all.
And that's for sure. So we're almost at the end of the slideshow presentation. What we're going to do is we're going to answer your questions in the next 30 minutes of the show. So we're going to try to go through as many questions as possible. I'm going to wrap this up relatively quickly. Let's return back to the slideshow. So we see here that, of course, accessories always going to improve your scanner experience. And these are some of the most popular accessories that you can consider. Of course, antennas and coax cable. As we said multiple times, up and out if possible. Putting an antenna on the outside of your vehicle, on the outside of your home. If you're not able to put an antenna outside your vehicle or outside your home, place an antenna by a window, up in the attic. Or, doing something interesting in the vehicle, but putting an antenna near a window or up out of the, away from underneath the dash or wherever you have it, putting an antenna a little bit higher up. Multi-couplers, they will be your friend when you have multiple scanners.
Yeah.
That'll allow you to connect one antenna to multiple scanners. So if you've got a really great antenna and you've got a couple of scanners in your shack, multi-couplers are great. Cases and mounts. I can't say enough about carrying cases.
Oh, yeah.
You invest a lot of money into your SDS 100 or whatever radio you have, carrying case is going to protect it. You can purchase those carrying cases, of course, from our sponsor, Scanner Master. There's a link right down in the description of this video, which is an affiliate link, which helps us keep the lights on and pays the bills around here. So definitely click that link, visit the website, check out the carrying cases. Mounts. Like right here.
Yep.
I don't know if I can.
Oh, here, I've got this one here.
I can't pull it off because yes. Look at that. That's great. Hold your scanners. It looks like Rich has gotten creative and has his scanners back to back on the mount.
One on one side, one on the other side. So, yeah, the one side has got the slot so that you can put your radio that has a stud like a 436 does.
Or even this radio here with the carrying case, as you can see there.
Absolutely. And then if your radio has got a clip, there is a slot on the top that you can fit the clip in. And if you've got a case, that also fits in that slot.
Yeah, great things. Batteries and power supplies are a huge option, especially with batteries. If you have an SDS, being able to get an extra battery. If you're going to be out and about, not able to plug in at all throughout the day, and you want to make sure that you don't run out of juice, an extra battery is great. Power supplies are great. So whenever possible, if you're able to plug in, if you have the proper cabling or the proper AC or DC adapter, use those. Speakers and headphones, great thing, especially if you're riding a train or you're out and about and you need something a little bit louder because the speaker on the scanner's not cutting it. An external speaker is great. Digital upgrades, as we mentioned, that customer that may want to monitor Yarmouth in that county, maybe they end up purchasing a radio that has DMR ability, so they decide, I really think I should monitor Yarmouth. And then what they end up doing is they find out, I got the 325P2. I can just purchase the DMR upgrade and I'm able to hear.
Yeah.
GPS receivers. We've done whole shows about the GPS receiver. It's such a beautiful thing when you're traveling in the vehicle. The scanner will update itself as you travel. And last but not least, easier to read manuals. Yes, easier to read manuals. It's taking the manual that the manufacturer has created and putting it into layman's terms. It's a little bit easier to understand.
Yeah, they are great. If you're kind of new to the hobby, or even if you're not new to the hobby, there's a lot of information in there. There's stuff you didn't know, and stuff you didn't know you didn't know.
All this is great things. If you're looking for more information, hit the affiliate link down in the description of this video. It'll take you to scannermaster.com. Their menu goes across left to right. You can find all these various accessory categories right on the website. The website's so easy to use, so definitely check that out. And as a reminder, Scannermaster is a sponsor of these scanner guys, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that. Next week, we're going to be talking about DMR, NextEdge, and Pro Voice. All the other digital stuff that you can monitor besides P2 and P1. We're going to talk about how they work. We're going to talk about what you need to know if you're trying to listen to it. And we're going to tell you some of the cool stuff that some of these formats will do. And it's going to be really an interesting show, so that'll be next week. Wednesday, June the 2nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, live right here on YouTube. If you have Apple TV or Roku, download the YouTube app, and you can watch us right on your television. And as always, after the broadcast, or if you missed the broadcast, you can always watch it on our YouTube channel. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and visit our channel often. Train Aficionado Live will be coming at you with a new show on Monday, June the 7th. Rich and I host this 90-minute show where we talk about trains and we answer your questions. A great show we're coming up with is talking about traveling with a scanner while rail fanning, things that you need to know. And then also, if you're going to be taking a train trip, some tips and suggestions on what to do when you're on the train with a scanner. We're going to cover that all with Travel Week with Train Aficionado, and then we're going to have a travel show on the Scanner Guys. So it's going to be a great week starting Monday, June the 7th, and then our next Scanner Guys show will be on the 9th on that week, and we'll be chatting about traveling with your police and fire scanner. So a great show right there. So make sure you tune in. And don't forget our sponsor since 1978, the nation's most experienced dealer of all brands of new police scanners, software and accessories, and programming. Shop them online or call the scanner experts at 1-800-722-6637. That number again is 1-800-722-6637. They're open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Check out their website, scannermaster.com, and email them if you have questions, support@scannermaster.com. And make sure you check out their social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Scannermaster Co. So all good stuff right there. And we're going to have a great show next week, so definitely tune in and check it out. And we are now going to get to your questions. We're going to try to answer as many questions as possible before the bottom of the hour.
Well, I want to give a quick shout out to my buddy Terry, who I've known for probably 20 years or so via Radio Reference and Karma and other Illinois, Missouri scanner stuff. So, hey, Terry, how you doing? And he's also a database editor, like several of us that are in the comments, and you and I are both database editors at Radio Reference. So Terry's a good guy. He's from about 300 miles away from where I live, but he does a lot of the same stuff I do. Jim is the first time that he's been commenting, but he always watches the show using his Amazon Fire Stick on one of his big screen TVs. So,
cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're big guys, but we're even bigger on a 55-inch screen. So,
or what is it? Some of the TVs are 80 or 70 or something.
Yeah, my wife's got a 70 out in the living room, but she won't watch me on it. Yeah, she says she can see me enough all the time, and
yeah, she can just look and see you live in person.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, she's sitting right there. So, and we got to give another shout out to Dale and Kelly. So drive safely, guys.
Yeah, I wish. I mean, there's a lot of commitment there from Dale, and to be listening, not even watching, but listening to us on the road.
Yeah, when I had an appointment and we had one of the other shows, then I couldn't be there on the show, and I've got my cell phone going and I've got it in the holder and I got it on the show and I'm listening to it, but I can't watch it. Of course, I know what you look like anyway. So
yeah, good stuff.
Yes, and Joe Bearcat checks in and reminds us that the 125 is, yes, still being manufactured. And we mention that every week. It's still being manufactured. They're just hard to come by these days with all the nonsense going on. So thank you for that, Joe. And, we do love the 125. We talk about it all the time. So the SDSs aren't only that's just the best on simulcast, but they have the best displays. So, yeah, how can you beat that display on a handheld scanner?
Yeah,
you just can't.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about the display is there's two different. There's the simple display. Yep. Which gives you everything you need to know, and then there's the geek out display, where you can customize, the fields and have things in there. The great thing about the SDS, yes, it's a very expensive scanner, and if that's the option that you have to get because of simulcast, it's a scanner that will also grow with you.
Yeah.
So as you learn about the hobby and you dive more into menu options and so on and so forth with the SDS, there's a lot of great stuff with the scanner.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, one of the other viewers mentioned a little bit later on, said the neat thing about the SDS is there's stuff that you didn't know about and you didn't know you needed on the display. You can customize that display to show stuff that, number one, you didn't know existed, and number two, you didn't know how interesting it was. So things like GPS coordinates, if you're using it in the GPS mode, or there's a bunch of different stuff you can do with it. So when you go into Sentinel, you can go into display options, and you can see all the different fields it's capable of. Turn off the stuff you don't care about, turn on the stuff you like, and turn on some of the stuff you don't know about to see if it's something that you like.
Yeah, I mean, it's just great.
It was Jason. Display info I didn't know I wanted.
Yeah, you're probably saying, holy crap, there's a lot of information on here. And then you learn, I can see that on the screen. I can see that on the screen. I can see this on the screen.
Oh, yeah. One of the things I used to do on my old car is I keep a 996 in my car for a close call and such. But on the RH96 on my old vehicle, I would have it set up so that the elevation would be displayed on my radio when I'm not otherwise engaged with it. And because I didn't have an altimeter in my car, and for some reason, I love knowing my elevation. Now, my new car has got an elevation display on it, and I can look at it and say, I'm in 1,900 feet or whatever. But the old car didn't have that. And when you're driving up and down the mountains, it's kind of neat to see that, hey, we're about to hit 5,000 or 10,000. Yeah. So, but now, and you can actually do that on some of these scanners with the GPS unit. Let's see here. Ron, please don't buy a $100 scanner just because it's cheaper than a digital. You're going to be returning it, and we get that a lot. People will buy the $100 scanner, and when they get it, and they well, how come it doesn't work here? Well, it's because you use digital in your area.
Or the other thing that they do is they go to the big box store, and this is in the section where they have police scanners. This is it.
Yeah.
And they figure, okay, well, there's the scanner. I got to buy this scanner because this is what they got.
Yeah.
And then it
says police scanner right on the front, so it should work for the police, right?
Yeah, and then they come to find out, and then they give us, then they stumble across us, whether it be online, and they say, I got this scanner, blah 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 model. I'm trying to program this in. So we're going through what I was showing you on, for a new scanner buyer. I'm then going into the database, and unless it's in the top of my head, I'm looking in the database. I said, well, you were trying to listen to Portland, Maine with that $100 scanner. No, it's not going to work. And then I tell them, well, you're going to need at least this digital scanner in order to be able to hear it. And then they're like, what do I do with this? I said, are you within return policy?
Yep.
And then, I mean, I'll be happy to set you up with the scanner that you need. You have to keep in mind, it's not going to be $100, but, we can get something that'll work.
Yeah, they'll get something for you. And or a lot of times they'll send in that $100 scanner into us for programming. And, and then we'll send it back to them and say, sorry, you can't do it. So if you're not sure, and you've got a scanner you want to send it for programming, or you've got one, give us a call. We'll let you know if it's going to work in your area to see if it's worth sending it in, because that might put you past the return program. So
yeah, you want to make sure, in doubt, ask questions.
Yeah, give us a call. We'll find out. So let's see here. Dan wrote, zip code programming should not be confused with GPS scanning. Yes, there is a difference.
Yeah, I mean, for the example, you can use a zip code base. You can use with a database scanner. You can use a GPS, right? If you use full database. Now you can still do it with a clean slate scanner, but the thing is, it needs to be programmed for all the areas that you're going to be traveling through, and it also needs the GPS latitude, longitude, and range for each group that's in the scanner.
Right.
Talking Uniden. So each group or system has to have a range. But yes, you can do GPS scanning on both database and clean slate. One involves a little bit more work on your part, but yes. Yeah. There is a difference. So if you think, I'm going to buy a 996 and I'm going to buy a GPS, I'm going to plug it in, put it in the scanner, and it's magically going to happen. No. That's why it's called a clean slate scanner. Yeah. You need to program it so it works.
Yeah, I've got a 996P2 in my car, and we have 15 counties in my state, and I have all 15 counties programmed with GPS coordinates, so it turns them on and off. Some of my counties are too large, so I have to have them broken down into two sections, a north or south or an east and west. But again, I just have them set up with a GPS, so as I travel and I go into Mayberry County, it turns on Mayberry County. When I go to my pilot, it turns on to my pilot stuff. So it works. You can do that with a clean slate scanner, or you can do it more automatically with a database scanner. Or on a database scanner, you can create favorites lists and have those turn on and off with the GPS.
Yeah, and you can create systems on either one. So let's say you want to listen to the mall security, and it's you want to do a 1 mile radius.
Yep.
Put in that address of that mall. Put a 1 mile radius. That'll turn on when you get in that area, and they'll turn off when you leave it. So I mean, you could do crazy stuff like that as well.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do with these scanners. And again, try it out, play with it, figure out what your scanner can do for you instead of what you can do for your scanner. So Joe says he sent us a link regarding some Scanner Master books. So yeah, Joe, I did get that. Unfortunately, I forgot to respond to it, but I did get that email. I will, or that message. I will respond back to it. I just got tied up with something and I forgot all about it. So multi-couplers. We spoke about accessories. A multi-coupler actually has a little bit of an amplifier in them. The Stridsbergs, at least, they have a small amplifier in them. So you would normally, those are intended to overcome the connector loss by putting in a jumper and a connector and maybe an adapter between the radio and your antenna that you wouldn't have otherwise. But the amplifier sometimes gives you a little bit better signal than having the antenna connected to your radio directly. So try it and see how it works. I've noticed that my radios do tend to get better signal quality through the multi-coupler than they do with just the antenna. If you're using a preamp, and we get calls on this all the time, we don't normally recommend preamps in an urban environment because the noise floor is too high and all that's going to get amplified. And a preamp always works best when you have the amp up at the antenna versus down at the radio, because now you're not amplifying all that noise that your coax is picking up. So,
yeah, and the other thing too, even from brand of radio, I mean, that was the huge discussion. What's the difference between GRE and Uniden? This is back in the day. Yeah. There used to be a little bit more sensitivity on the GRE, so you definitely didn't want to put a preamp on it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is, PL tones and digital PL tones came in handy with the GRE radio, especially if you were in the city.
Yeah.
You could get a little bit more interference if you were running that wide open.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of preamps in general. They have their place, but for most scanner users, they're going to create more problems than they help. Yeah. Propagation changes hourly. Yep. We were talking about that a little earlier. Mornings are much better sometimes. When on the police department, we had our VHF channels, and early mornings, we were picking up stuff from hundreds of miles away. In fact, we had to change the PL tone on our VHF channels because we were getting interference from a county 300 miles away. So, Dale's made it to the Biloxi Command Condo, so he can watch the last 10 minutes live. So welcome to your hotel there, Dale. Joe, we were talking earlier about that temperature inversion. That would have been the one in 1988. Joe was in Pittsburgh, and he was working a repeater in Chicago on a handheld. So, yeah, that was fancy. That was a famous one. And I read about it in magazines and stuff as well as lived it. So. Ron is in my old stomping grounds in the Chicago area, coming there from Michigan, and he's going down towards St. Louis. So, Ron, hook up with Terry. You're going to be in his backyard. So, if you guys can work something out, that would be great. Don't forget the wiki. We mentioned it briefly, and I wanted to talk about it, but we got carried past that. The wiki at Radio Reference is awesome. It has a lot of great information and stuff that doesn't fit the database. 10 codes, unit IDs, all kinds of great information about systems and agencies that just doesn't work in the database. So don't forget the wiki. And let's see here. The database is not infallible. There's a lot of things that need to be updated from time to time. And anytime you see FM on a frequency that's above 100 megahertz, chances are it should be updated to FM narrow. So try it as it's listed in the database, and then try it with the other one just to make sure which one works better for you. Typically, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference that most people are going to notice it one way or the other. But in order to be more correct, FM narrow is the proper designation for frequencies above 100 megahertz for the most part. There's always exceptions to the rules.
Yeah.
Let's see here. We were talking about talk group IDs and user IDs. They are different but related. So talk group IDs are the number that groups a bunch of users together. And the user ID is the individual ID for that particular radio. So if you have a two-way radio, when you key the mic, it sends out a user ID. We talked about this last week on the trucking show. And everybody that are on the same talk group ID would hear that, and then maybe even see your user number or the alias that was assigned to it. And a lot of the live feeds say they have alpha tags on them. We were talking about Broadcastify earlier. Mm-hmm. So you can sometimes see the alpha tags. That doesn't always work. Depends on the feed and depends on what you're watching.
A little bit of latency. There's a little bit of latency. I've hosted a couple of feeds, and I set it up so it would receive the alpha tag display, but a lot of times it was latent, a little bit of latency.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is helpful because you can kind of say, oh, okay, there's a lot of activity on this particular channel or talk group. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a cool tool that Broadcastify is giving people.
And it also depends on the feed provider. If the feed provider has tags set up on his
not feed. All feeds are going to have it.
Right, exactly. So, and let's see here. We were talking earlier about FM and FM narrow. Some of the stuff that still uses FM wide are things like marine radio traffic, the weather channels, Low band, if you're in an area that still uses low band, they still use wide, and some paging, and there's a few things here and there. But the vast majority of stuff that is in the VHF high band and UHF band, UHF T band, they've been allowed to retain FM wide or the standard FM. But the vast majority of stuff between 150 and 470 megahertz is supposed to go to FM narrow bandwidth. Some places haven't done it, but they're supposed to have. Let's see here. Low band, especially FM. Yep. GMRS, ham radio. There's a couple other things that are FM that are still using the older, wider version of FM. Let's see. There's still a lot of work to be done on the database. There's still a lot of things that need to be cleaned up. But again, it's a volunteer thing, so people don't get paid to do that. And
the other thing, too, is if you know, we've talked about this before in other shows, you can submit information to the database. They may not be aware of the changes.
Right.
And that's a great way to be able to do that. And then you may get a dialogue, with that administrator that's maintaining that area. May say, hey, I'm able to do this, but I need a little bit more information on your end.
Yep.
And that's helpful. I mean, the thing is we can make the databases better and better just by submitting information. I mean, there's more people out there listening and submitting information. That's going to be a huge help to all the other fellow scanner users.
Yeah, we get people say, there's an error here. And, okay, great. Let us know what the error is so we can get it fixed. And we'll do that. So... we spoke last week about trunking systems, and the question came up about how you do wildcards on the 436. So wildcard is a term that's used for GRE, Whistler, Radio Shack type scanners so that you can pick up anything on that particular system. On the Uniden scanners, that's done by putting the system into ID search versus ID scan. So it effectively comes out to the same thing. They just go about it different ways. And also we talked about iCalls. If you watched the show from last week, we talked about iCalls and how to enter those on your scanner. If you're not sure, the owner's manual does say how to enter iCalls, or you can go to Mark's the easier to read scanner manual, and that will tell you how to do that. And there's I'm sure there's YouTube videos that will show you how to do it. But we did speak about that last week on the Trunking Show. And let's see, a bunch of check-ins from some new people and from some of our regulars.
All you new guys and gals, hit that subscribe button down below so you won't miss a beat. That also helps us out on our channel as well.
Yep. Joshua asked on analog, you can stay on a frequency just by putting it in manual and follow that conversation. Can you do the same thing on trunking systems or digital systems?
Yes.
When you press the hold button on a Uniden scanner or the manual button on a Whistler, it holds on that talk group if you're in a trunking system. And while the frequency may change, the talk group stays the same. And it will go to the proper frequency for that talk group, assuming that they're on the same site or that site is currently available to your radio. So if they move to a different site, and that brings up a whole different ball of wax. But for the most part, if you press the hold button on the talk group, you'll hear that talk group no matter what frequency it ends up going to. Let's see here. Dan has us in narrow mode. Yeah. I wish I was in narrow mode. I'm still in wide mode here.
Yeah, me too.
Let's see here. Waiting for his SDS 100. He's been using a Pro 82 for years. Boy, an SDS 100 from a Pro 82, that is a remarkable
upgrade.
difference. Yeah, absolutely. So, let's see here. Across the nation for Scanner Master, add Canada to that. Yeah, apparently a couple of the radio vendors in Canada no longer sell scanners or do programming. We do programming for Canada as well as the U.S. The problem with Canada is if it's a radio that you send to us for programming, oftentimes it takes longer and it gets very expensive to send the radio. If you're got a zip code scanner, we're doing an SD card, it's a whole lot less expensive, but it's more expensive than it is in the U.S., but it's less expensive for you because you don't send the radio in. We just send you the radio. You don't have to pay or we send you the chip. You don't have to spend all that money sending the radio back both ways.
Yeah, that's certainly, when shipping outside of the country or into another country, it's very expensive.
We do recommend if you've got a radio and you're capable of doing your own programming, you're usually better off doing it because, number one, it's cheaper, and number two, you set it up exactly the way you want it versus the way that we do it. We have a set way of doing it. So, Joe brings up a good point. Make sure you back up your settings when you're changing your display settings. Whenever you're making a big change on your programming, always make a backup. So read your radio and then save it and then make changes, send it to the radio, and if you like it, you're good. If you don't like it, you can revert back to your saved settings.
Yes, Joe, that is certainly a good thing because you've taken all this time, setting your settings, and then you go and do something like change your display, and then you've completely wiped out all that work that you've done because, you probably realize, I got the beep on, you've turned that off, or you've turned on so you could see the radio ID on the screen. All these little things add up.
Oh, yeah.
And you can wipe it away.
And you can save multiple profiles so that you can have this profile, that profile, another profile. And, you should do your saving like you vote in Chicago, early and often. So, Dan said he was like the replay and the record feature. He never knew he would like it, but he uses it all the time. So, multiple SD cards. We've talked often about having a backup SD card for your scanner. Mm-hmm. You and I both do that. We have backup SD cards for all of our scanners. Yep. You can have one SD card with one display mode and your backup with a different display mode. And you want to make a change? Boom, turn the radio off, change the SD card out, put the new SD card, turn the radio on. You got a whole different setup.
Yep.
Let's see here. What's this elevation where you speak of? He lives in Florida. So in Florida, you stand up and your elevation is changed more than if you drive across the state. It's just kind of one little, there's a little hump in the middle, and that's about it. So Florida is very flat. That's why it floods all the time. Same thing with Illinois. It's all, it's like a tabletop until you get to southern Illinois, and then you got some hills which are 100 feet. I'm out here in Arizona now, and I live in the foothills, about 2,000 feet up. And, the valley is about 1,000 feet. And then I go up to Flagstaff, and that's about 7,000 feet. So it's quite a bit, we actually have elevation here in Arizona, up and down, up and down. That's why I-17 is so much fun. You're always either going up, which means you got the gas to the floor trying to get up the mountain, or you're going down and you're slamming on your brakes trying to keep you from going 90 miles an hour. So
it's like a roller coaster ride.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I know where all the runoff bays are just in case. So, elevation doesn't apply to Florida. So, how good is close call?
We've spent a whole show talking about that, too.
So, it's not a programming option.
No, it's not a programming option, but it's great to be able to find, that security guard that's at the mall or whatever it may be. It's certainly a great feature. Definitely check out our show about, searching for frequencies in close call. We've got a great slide that kind of describes what it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Les mentions that VHF really kind of stinks reception-wise in the greater Toronto area, and I can vouch for that. I spent a lot of time bouncing around Mississauga, Toronto, Burlington, Hamilton, and for some reason the VHF paging is everywhere, and it has been for decades up there, and it just kills VHF scanners, especially some of the older ones that are really sensitive but less selective. So, that's That's when PL tones become very very helpful. And let's see here. Unit and let's see here. Dale is safe and sound. When the SDS 1000 is going to be out? Well, we're waiting on the SDS 500 first.
Yes.
So we're expecting the SDS 500 to be announced anytime.
Yeah, right. This is going to go to Radio Reference. It's going to be spread as a rumor. We're not.
We're kidding, guys.
We're kidding, yes.
We're kidding. If you've watched our show before, you know about the SDS 500. So,
yeah.
Of course, now Uniden can't use the SDS 500 for the new radios because we've joked about it.
Yeah. Oh, the 500's out. Scratch that off the list.
Scratch that. Yeah. So, yeah, let's see here. Databases on Radio Reference are living things. They need constant feeding. Yeah, Joe, you're right. They need constant feeding and constant massaging. They need to be massaged and corrected and updated. Some administrators are better than others on that. So certain states are usually going to be more accurate than others. But again, remember, this is all volunteer things. So if you see something wrong, make a submission so it can get fixed.
Yeah.
So Dale's playing on the Gulfport Biloxi Pro Voice system. So it works great from Radio Reference. So I don't have any Pro Voice here, so unfortunately it's hard for me to do Pro Voice. The last time I was up in Denver, they were still on their Pro Voice system, so I was able to play around my scanner up there. But now that system's gone, and I think the nearest Pro Voice we got to us is Albuquerque. And I'm not about to go to Albuquerque just to play with Pro Voice. Let's see here. This is a much-watched show for anybody who wants to get hooked on the scanner. Yeah, absolutely. So we do our best to be entertaining and informative. Bob bought Pro Voice for his SDS 100 and he listened to his police department for 3 months, and then they switched to encryption. I feel your pain, Bob. I feel your pain. Within the week after I moved out here, my town went encrypted. That's
like
one of the
they
reasons
know.
I bought the house here.
It's like they know. I mean, for whatever reason, I'm not going to name where I'm at, but the town that I'm in decided to, everything's on a regional trunk system and regional dispatching, but the highway department I could listen to. And I don't know what they did. They encrypted the highway department shortly after I moved in. I don't know why, but I know why. But I'm not going to get into that on the show. There's been a lot of mismanagement of money in this town, and I'm wondering if they're trying to protect their butts. But anyway,
that's half the reason people go encryption these days, I guess. So, which one of us has the Railroad Crossing Sound app for your daily alarm clock? I used to tell you the truth. I used to, but
I'll have to check out that app. Thank you so much for the suggestion.
Ding, 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 ding. Although I tell you what, I listen to I watch a couple of the rail camps, and there's one that I watch all the time. And those the crossing bell signals, I hear that in my sleep sometimes, I swear, because I'm watching that all day long.
Well, I went to the museum, that's not too far from me, and they've got displays of, the various crossing types, and of course there's a button you can press, and of course people press it, and then like the traditional crossing where I hear the bells and all that. My head every single time, I'm like a train to my head whips around. I'm like, oh, it's just that.
Yeah.
Squirrel, type of thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, where I used to live, they had those very directional stationary horns at some of the crossings nearest to me. And the crossing to the north had one of those horns. The crossing to the south didn't. So when I heard the bells going off without the horns, I knew it was a northbound train. And then when I heard the horns going off the same time the bell, I knew it was a southbound train. It was just perfect for me. If your city and county recently has changed and you have a zip code scanner, don't be surprised if it won't work on the new system. You have to update the database. And when you buy a scanner, the database that's on that card is not the current database.
Yeah, it's whenever they last ping the database. And what they're basically doing is every scanner they're manufacturing, they're just cloning and cloning and cloning and cloning. So first thing you should do with a database scanner is update the database.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also check the firmware.
Check the firmware. The Home Patrols, the firmware is not such a big deal, but the SDSs and the 436s, 536s, make sure you update the firmware. Chris was monitoring FRS channels and GMRS channels, and there was a little boy missing, and they had they thought he might have an FRS radio, but then he came across a signal that was non-voice. It sounded like a diesel engine. So there are a couple things that could be. It could be a non-GMRS user that's using those frequencies illegally. It could be intermod from something else. The only data that's allowed on GMRS or FRS radios normally is a short database for things like GPS location or maybe an identifier. But if it's continuous data, that's not supposed to be done on GMRS or FRS. Although it's not too unusual to hear people using DMR or NXDN modes on those frequencies. It's not legal, but it's not unusual. So, and let's see here. Dan is going to finish the picture for the SDS 10,000 and the SDS 1,000. So Dan is going to work on those images. So maybe we can share those.
Okay.
Jason says he's got an SDS 500 for sale, $1,500, prepaid only. Okay, yeah.
Yes. No looking at the merchandise.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our listeners from the Chicago area is looking for a DIY attic antenna for his Chicago area home. Attic antennas are actually pretty a good idea for a lot of people because you can use a regular outside base station antenna, but you really don't have to worry too much about weather protection because they're protected by the attic. The reception is usually pretty darn good in the attic. I mean, I've got all attic antennas as well, and they work pretty well. Obviously, an outside antenna would work better, but putting an antenna in the attic is your next best thing, and you don't have to worry too much about weather. You can just hang it on a piece of kite string up in the attic. So look at the Skyband antenna. They're not very expensive, and they work really well in the attic. And they're relatively short, so if you've got a low clearance attic, that works really well. DMR encryption, is that different than simulcast encryption? Not really, but yes and no. So DMR encryption is built into most DMR radios, or many DMR radios, I should say, and it's just a matter of a programming setting. It's not as secure as P25's encryption modes, and there are a couple different encryption modes for P25, but it's secure enough for most users of encryption. Encryption for police, fire, or even business radios is not intended to be protecting against nasty international spies and stuff like that. It's to protect the users from casual scanner listeners. So, and let's see here. And I think Chris says he listens to FRS, GMRS, and MERS on his radios. So those are a lot of fun to listen to. You can hear some really neat stuff on that. So.
Yeah, we want to remind you next week we're going to talk DMR, Next Edge, and Pro Voice on the show. So make sure you mark your calendar or set a reminder on your phone. Wednesday, June the 2nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. We're going to be live on YouTube. You can download the YouTube app on your Roku TV or Apple TV and watch us on the big screen. So 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. You can watch us chat about DMR, Next Edge, and course, Pro Voice.
Yep.
All good stuff there. Make sure you check out the Train Aficionado live YouTube channel at Train Aficionado. Follow, like, and subscribe to our social media there as well. This is where we talk all about trains. Next show will be Monday, June the 7th, the first Monday of every month. We have a show on there. Rich and I host the show, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. We'll be live on there, so make sure you go over to that channel and subscribe to that channel as well. And don't forget about our social media. Follow, like, and subscribe to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at The Scanner Guys. Yes, if you're watching this video for the first time, hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. We would love to see that. And check out our website, thescannerguyshow.com. And as always, the Scanner Guys are brought to you by Scanner Master. So that about wraps it up. We went into a little bit of overtime this evening, but typically our shows are an hour and a half. The first hour is the slideshow presentation. The second part, which is about 30 minutes or so, we'll answer your questions. So if we didn't get to your question this evening, you can certainly email support@scannermaster.com or give them a call at 1-800-722-6637. Anything else you want to throw in there before we sign off?
I'm good.
All right. Well, I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson.
We'll catch you again next week on The Scanner Guys Live.